How's it going, my friends? Right back here is Moores Lake. Moores Lake feeds directly into the Mississippi River. It's a really beautiful area. Obviously right now it's like late winter, early spring. So just imagine lush foliage all throughout here. It is indeed very beautiful. But yeah, I'm not gonna not shoot because it's this season. This is what it looks like every now and then here. Back here somewhere is a place called Gray Cloud Dunes Scientific Area, something like that. I've done a photo shoot there. It's a beautiful area. We'll try to hop over there at some point. This video, virtual tour of Cottage Grove, Minnesota, by special request in the comments. I apologize for not doing it sooner, but hey, there's a lot of stuff to shoot in the Twin Cities. Let's get it. How's it going, my friends? My name is Jesse Lynch and I run the hardest working real estate team in the game. We're called To the Twin Cities, and you can check out our website, tothetwincities.com. But this YouTube channel is all about helping you find a place to call home, a place to land here in beautiful Minnesota, the Twin Cities of Minnesota, today specifically Cottage Grove, Minnesota. And that's whether you're buying a house for the first time or relocating here from a different city, state, country, planet. First-time home buyers and relocations, that's what we do, and that's what we do better than anybody else. So if either of those things appeal to you, then do us both a favor, subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get notified so you can see every time we put these videos out. And while I have you, if you wouldn't mind, give the video a thumbs up and say anything at all in the comments. That engagement is helpful not only to this video and not only to this channel, but to other people like yourselves who are, you know, thinking about moving here, thinking about buying a house here, whatever, right? So I'd appreciate that. And as always, if you are one of those people who are moving here, thinking about moving here, whatever, get a hold of us and we will crush it for you. Nobody will work harder for you. And you can go to our website, tothetwincities.com. We have a contact formula that you can fill out literally in seconds, or you can shoot us an email directly to info@tothetwincities.com. They lead to the same inbox, so completely up to you how you do it. You know, live your life. It's just important that you do it, and we can, you know, get the show on the road, get you headed in the right direction. Today's video, we're talking Cottage Grove, huh? This whole spot right here, this is one of maybe two sort of commercial hubs in Cottage Grove. Also, you're just to the south of Woodbury, and Woodbury has all of the stores, pretty much, but you have tons of stuff here and in sort of the other little spot as well. So definitely a pretty complete suburb and growing rapidly. I'm excited to show you this one. Again, per special request in the comments. I'd love it if you'd leave a comment below about what you would like us to do a video on. Sometimes people are like, hey, do one on Woodbury. And then we're like, we already have one. Here's a link. And then, you know, that's cool too. All right, let's dive in to Cottage Grove, Minnesota. Go. How's it going, friends? Right now I just wanted to start sort of on this bluff, beautiful bluff. Where we started the whole video was basically just right over there. Again, this is Moores Lake, and basically right here is where it meets the Mississippi River. And it's just a really beautiful area. There's some interesting stuff going on as far as like this area specifically. It's like a dry gravel, and there's interesting vegetation that grows here, but this isn't that kind of YouTube video, so I'm not going to dive that much into it. But it is just beautiful. And then obviously sort of the bluffs, the dunes, and during the fall, it is hard to beat how beautiful this area is. Cottage Grove is a suburb in the sort of southeastern corner of the Twin Cities metro. Technically, it does go a little bit further. It depends on if you're including Hastings in the metro or not, but it does start to get kind of feel like you're at the end of the road as far as the metro goes once you're in Cottage Grove, and you're maybe 20 minutes to downtown St. Paul, because this is a suburb of St. Paul. 20 minutes to downtown St. Paul, you're maybe 25 minutes to the MSP airport, and then 30 minutes to downtown Minneapolis. So it's not particularly far by any account from any of those things, but that 30 minutes from downtown Minneapolis is what we're seeing a lot of people are kind of calling the cutoff. So I would say it fits right within that 30-minute radius that so many people that we help have. And geographically speaking, to the north is Woodbury, which we have a virtual tour on. To the east, pretty rural. It's just a township, Denmark Township. To the south is this Mississippi River, Moores Lake, as well as Spring Lake is basically just on the other side of like an island kind of thing going on here. And then to the west is St. Paul Park and Newport. The population of Cottage Grove still pretty small, definitely still growing. We're talking 38,000 people in all of Cottage Grove, and there is so much land, like open land in Cottage Grove. If you look at where new builds are going up, Cottage Grove has a ton of them, especially on the more like affordable ends of new builds. So let's say like the 400s, probably the low to mid 400s. And with all that development comes a rising population that's growing pretty rapidly, 11% growth in the past decade. And I think that trend will continue for a while because there is still so much land available, and that's very much just how the Twin Cities metro grows, is just outward. And that's true of most metros, but yeah, definitely here. And obviously I'm in a park. There is so much park space in Cottage Grove, like a ton. And like I said, it basically butts up to the Mississippi River. So there's a good amount of sort of like water available and that whole thing. There's 45 miles of walking, biking, and hiking trails, and over 1,300 acres of just park space in general, which, if I'm doing my math correct, means that per capita there's like, I don't know, like over a quarter acre of park space per person, which is like a house lot, right? So pretty good. As far as schools are concerned, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. There are generally, I would say, generally good schools. But depending on where you are within Cottage Grove, currently there's much better schools on one part and maybe less good schools for other parts. So just something to be aware of, where you're buying, what are the schools currently for if you have kids and what grades they're in, or potentially, you know, I think some of these new build areas potentially, but if you don't have kids, by the time you have school-age kids, I think those schools will continue to improve just because of demand, because of population and such. So specifically speaking, there's South Washington County School District that gets a B+, and then Hastings Public School District gets an A-. But then what does that mean? Specifically, high schools, there's East Ridge High School, that gets an A, and that serves the northern half, which that whole South Washington County Hastings Public School District, that is actually flipped on its head there. So the northern portion of Cottage Grove would be served by the South Washington County School District, but yet the high school that serves the northern portion gets an A, and then Park Senior High School, which serves the southern portion of Cottage Grove, gets a B-. Okay, interesting. As far as middle schools are concerned, Cottage Grove Middle School, which serves most of Cottage Grove on sort of the eastern portion, that gets a B, and then Ottman Middle School, which serves most of the western portion, gets a B. So already a little complicated as far as like there's the northern half and southern half, and then in the middle schools there's the western half and the eastern half. I don't know. I didn't make this up. I'm just doing my best to interpret the data. You know what I mean? And then as far as elementary schools go, a lot of very good ones, but they range, you know, pretty dramatically. Gray Cloud Elementary School, A-. Cottage Grove Elementary School, A-. And then you start moving down slightly. nothing crazy. Pinecrest Elementary School, B+, Armstrong Elementary School, B+, etc. And then it basically, there's, you know, as low as B- in the area. So again, if that stuff is super important, I would say there are very good schools here. Just be aware of where you're going to end up specifically, depending on which house, you know, what area you buy in. And like I said, a lot of new builds are coming in here. So I think that's why you'll see, and why we see some folks looking there, is just because the opportunity to buy a relatively affordable new build home is pretty strong in Cottage Grove. And the median sale price is not too crazy compared to the median of the entire metro. Median sale prices are around $370,000 in all of Cottage Grove, and currently on the market there's a range of $260,000 to $808,000. And now some of that, the $260,000, that's very cheap, but Cottage Grove has a sort of rural past, and so some of the houses are going to feel pretty rural, pretty remote, pretty old, kind of farmy. So for sure there's going to be some cheap stuff in Cottage Grove. That doesn't all necessarily mean that, you know, you're going to want to live there or not. And Cottage Grove is dominated by people who own the homes. There's not a whole ton of stuff for rent out here, and not a whole ton of the folks who live here are renting the homes. It's like 90% of the people who live in Cottage Grove own the home that they live in, which is, for sure, it's how it feels. Again, sort of a rural past, and now there's a bunch of new builds coming in. But again, that affordability combined with all this park space, combined with generally pretty good schools, it's kind of where it's at. All right, let's hop over somewhere else, and we're gonna talk a little bit more. We're gonna talk pros and cons of Cottage Grove. All right, y'all, right now I'm at Cottage Grove Ravine Regional Park. This is a beautiful park. I have to admit, I've never been here until I'm shooting this video. And I'm like, this place is so nice. I mean, it's a regional park, they typically are, but you can tell that this place is just a bit newer because, again, you know, Cottage Grove is the path of progress. Everything here in general is relatively new. Hold for some of, you know, the homes, which we'll get to. So we're gonna talk pros and cons of Cottage Grove. And yeah, I mean, I'm just like, this park is just so nice. This lake is beautiful. There's paths all the way around it, and yeah, just super nice. So, but what are the pros? What are the cons? We'll start with the pros because, I don't know, those are pretty easy. Number one is this amazing outdoor space, all the trails and, you know, bike trails, running trails, etc. The Gray Cloud Dunes area, and then tons of little municipal parks all throughout the area. Yeah, I mean, this park has me pretty sold. And then also you're looking at really solid schools. Maybe not top 10, right? Maybe not like some of the best, but pretty hard to argue with, pretty good schools across the board. And you're also getting affordable homes associated with all this stuff. To me, that's like the triad, right? Outdoor spaces, schools, and affordability. And when they line up, that is that's a sweet spot. You know what I mean? And again, we're talking a median of $370,000. You can get new builds here for the low to mid 400s, and that's for single family homes. There's also townhomes here, which would be more affordable on average than those. So yeah, a pretty good, a diverse house stock as well, right? Where you have a lot of newer stuff, right? A lot of stuff post 2000s, but there still is, if you want a little bit of land and you want like a little bit of a rural feel, still while being in the metro, still close to stuff, you might luck out and find something here that like does it for you, because there is very much sort of a what used to be rural, you know, vibe going on in certain parts of Cottage Grove. Obviously some developments super suburban and you won't find any of that, but other developments you're going to see it kind of all over the place. And then lastly, I would just say tons of suburban amenities. It's not exactly like the most complete as far as those go, but there's so much stuff. You could never leave Cottage Grove, and I think you would have just about everything you need from a suburban amenity standpoint. That said, let's pop over to the cons, and I think the first con is basically just that it's a suburb, right? And it's a newer suburb, and so there are things associated with that that are pretty much unavoidable, but some people just are not into that, right? Some of the folks we're helping, this is not what they're looking for at all, right? You have pretty cookie cutter suburban amenities, you know, grocery stores, Target, etc. It's all stuff you've seen and could see in any suburb probably all over the country. And then you also have, you know, cookie cutter neighborhoods throughout where, you know, they've been built to be somewhat homogenous. You know, they look pretty similar. Some of them might have HOAs where they're sort of determining what you can or can't do, you know, as far as the aesthetic, the exterior aesthetic of your home, and then just in general sort of a lack of cultural events, right? That's just suburban in general. For most of your cultural events, you're going to the city, you're driving from here half hour, you know, kind of on the low end to downtown Minneapolis, 25 or 20 to downtown St. Paul. But then beyond that, that feels like a little bit of a cop-out to me, like to say one of the cons of a suburb is that it's suburban. So I try not to dwell too much on that, but this one very much is that. So beyond that, there's a little bit of like an industrial vibe at parts of Cottage Grove. And now for the most part, all the neighborhoods we've been in, you're not going to see it, right? You're pretty removed from it. But sometimes, like let's say your commute is to St. Paul, the commute between here and there might not be that pretty, right? There just might be like some industrial kind of yuck, right? Just some stuff that just is not that fun to look at. And yeah, I don't know, to me that's a con. Next con, I don't know if you can see it. It's not terrible here, but there is some airplane noise in Cottage Grove. It is under the flight path, but it's fairly removed from the flight path, so they're pretty high up. Egan at certain parts has it worse. Obviously, as you get close to the airport, it gets louder, but you're gonna have a little bit more flight noise here than you might some other areas. Which I think leads into the next one pretty well, which is that we're pretty much on the edge of the metro. To the east, there's basically no amenities. So as far as, you know, access to other places, it's pretty much to the west and to the north of where you're gonna be able to like quick run and get anything. So if you happen to be buying something in the southeastern corner of Cottage Grove, you might have to go to Hastings, which, while not super far, I wouldn't say is exactly convenient, you know, to this spot either. And then last but not least, you've probably heard me say this before, it's a little bit hard to explain. I like to say that there are echoes of a rural past, which is to say that at one point in the not too distant past, this was a rural area. And so it still has moments that feel like that, right? There are some homes that were built in the 80s or 90s before everything really started to get developed here. And they were like, we're buying a home in a rural area on the edge of the metro so we can, you know, do whatever we want with our yards within the law. And, you know, that's just a thing that not everybody's into, right? Some people want a suburb, they want to feel, you know, cohesively like a suburb. If you go to Woodbury, for example, the majority of that, where it's developed, there's nary a moment that feels rural, right? But here, for sure, there are. Between, you know, certain neighborhoods and parks, you're gonna find some areas that just feel a little bit rural, you know? A little bit more of like cars and trash and stuff. in the lawn, houses that are sort of tucked back and, you know, in the woods, maybe not as well taken care of. But on the bright side, the different side of that same coin, there is option to get a pretty sweet sort of rural, like wooded lot home in Cottage Grove, just because some stuff existed, you know, before that. I don't know, can you hear this plane? Maybe. It's not too bad. But that's it. That's all I got for pros and cons. Let's hop over here and we're gonna talk some other areas that might do the trick if you like what you see here in Cottage Grove. Yeah, let's do it. My friends, right now I'm in the Sunny Hill neighborhood. It's like a newer development here in Cottage Grove. Very, very nice houses, kind of depending on, you know, styles and all that. We're sort of ranging in the like 5 to maybe 700,000 range. So this is definitely on the higher end of things, but an absolutely beautiful neighborhood. And, you know, comparable, like, it's not super far from the likes of a Woodbury, but if you bought the same house in Woodbury, it would cost considerably, well, it would cost a bit more, right? So you're getting a little more value here than maybe the likes of Woodbury, just kind of because the market is a little cheaper here than the likes of Woodbury, even though they're right next to each other. But if you've been watching these videos, you probably know that I have a section called the For Fans of section, which is to say that if you like what you see here, you might want to check out some other areas. But before I dive into that, I would just like to say that if you are thinking about moving here, then get a hold of us. We'll crush it for you. Nobody will work harder for you than we will. So you can go to our website, tothetwincities.com. We have a contact form there that you could fill out in 30 seconds, or you can shoot us an email directly to info@tothetwincities.com. They lead to the same inbox, so it's totally up to you how you do it. Just, you know, depending on maybe how much information you want to include or whatever. So what are some areas to consider if you like what you see in Cottage Grove, but maybe just want some other options? Because obviously, Cottage Grove, perfectly acceptable and may very well be a place that you want to target as a place to live, but it's always nice to have a few other options, you know, especially when you're not tied super geographically to an area. So a few places that come to mind that feel very, very similar. If you're looking for the sort of southeastern metro in general, check out Rosemount. Rosemount is to the south of here, I guess kind of the southwest. And a really great spot, has similar properties as far as being like a little bit on the sort of like edge of the metro, but a lot of new builds coming in, generally very good schools, etc. Another spot to consider if you are basically looking for the total edge of the metro, debatable to some people if it's even in the metro. And Hastings is basically, you know, far southeastern corner of the metro. Again, debatably not even in the metro, depending on who you ask. Has a very cute little downtown. It's on the river. There's a decent amount of sort of new build homes going in to the greater Hastings area, but there's also a little bit more of like an older feel to a lot of it. Hastings was sort of established as like almost like a small town long before it was ever a suburb, right? So if that sounds at all appealing, check that out. Also, it shares some schools with Cottage Grove anyway. So this dog is gonna not stop barking at me, so I'm gonna walk this way. I'm like the mailman, except not. Another spot to consider that is completely removed geographically from here. It's basically on the northwestern side of the suburb. So if you don't care at all about, you know, geographically where in the Twin Cities, maybe you're just like half hour from downtown Minneapolis, cool. Then I would check out Ramsey. Again, Ramsey has a lot of, you know, characteristics that are very similar in terms of getting a new build, like very much the path of progress, right? It's in the expansion of the Twin Cities, and so you can get a cheaper new build in Ramsey or Cottage Grove than you can in a lot of other areas of the metro. Similarly to that, Shakopee. Shakopee is in the sort of southwestern corner, very similar for a lot of reasons. We also have a virtual tour on that as well, so check that out. And I would say finally, if the vibe and the affordability is not the priority, but you want to be close to this, Woodbury, absolutely worth checking out. If you have a higher budget, if you want some of the best schools in the whole metro, definitely Woodbury probably ought to be on the list. But all right, that's what I got for, for fans of. There are some other things that come to mind. It would just be, a conversation that we'd want to have with you to really zero in, hone in on what it is exactly that you're looking for. So again, get a hold of us. And if you have not done so yet, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you for being here. If you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up and leaving a comment of any sort, I would appreciate that very, very much. And as always, subscribe and click the bell so you can get notified when we put these videos out. If you're still watching, I would say you definitely should, because you've already watched this much of one video, and we have videos all over the metro. So yeah, thanks for hanging out. I will see you in the next one. This has been Cottage Grove, Minnesota. Bye-bye.